Imagine a world of mighty kings, breathtaking miracles, fierce battles, and a nation torn between devotion and betrayal. From Solomon's unmatched wisdom to Elijah's fiery showdown with the prophets of Baal, the story of one kings and two kings is a drama of divine power, human frailty, and a God who never gives up on his people. But there's more. Hidden lessons and unforgettable moments that will leave you amazed, curious. Let's dive into this epic saga together. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of our deep dives into the Bible's most incredible stories. Let's unravel these timeless truths together. As King David grew old, his health began to fail. He was no longer able to govern actively, and the kingdom began to feel the uncertainty of his approaching death. In this time of vulnerability, one of David's sons, Adonijah, decided to seize the throne. Adonijah was handsome and ambitious, much like his older brother Absalom had been. "I will be king," he declared, and he began to gather supporters. He invited key figures, including Joab, the commander of the army, and Abiathar, the priest, to join him in a secret coronation ceremony. However, he deliberately excluded Solomon and Nathan the prophet, knowing they were loyal to David. Meanwhile, Nathan the prophet learned of Adonijah's plot and went to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. "Have you heard?" Nathan asked. "Adonijah has declared himself king, but David does not know. If you want your son Solomon to reign, you must act now." Bathsheba approached David, who was lying weak in bed. She bowed and said, "My lord, you swore to me by the Lord that Solomon would succeed you as king, but Adonijah has made himself king, and the whole nation is watching. What will you do?" Nathan arrived shortly after to confirm Bathsheba's words. "My king," he said, "Adonijah has gathered his supporters and is already celebrating as if he were king. The people need to know who will rule after you." David, summoning his last reserves of strength, said, "Call Zadok, the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the commander. Take Solomon, anoint him king, and have him ride my mule to Gihon. Blow the trumpet and proclaim, 'Long live King Solomon.'" The announcement caused an uproar of celebration in Jerusalem. Adonijah and his supporters heard the commotion. "What is this noise?" they asked. When they learned that Solomon had been anointed king, Adonijah's guests fled in fear, and Adonijah himself sought refuge at the altar, pleading for his life. Solomon, now officially king, spared Adonijah for the moment, saying, "Go home. If you prove yourself worthy, no harm will come to you, but if you show rebellion, you will die." Before David died, he gave Solomon a solemn charge. "I'm about to go the way of all the earth," he said. "Be strong and show yourself a man. Walk in obedience to the Lord your God, so that you may prosper in all you do. Follow his commands, just as I have done." David also gave Solomon specific instructions about key figures. Joab, the former commander, had shed innocent blood and needed to be brought to justice. Shimei, who had cursed David during Absalom's rebellion, should be dealt with wisely. Barzillai's family, who had supported David, should be shown kindness. After David's death, Solomon began to establish his rule firmly. Adonijah, still ambitious, approached Bathsheba and asked her to request something from Solomon. "Let me marry Abishag, the young woman who cared for King David." Bathsheba brought the request to Solomon, but Solomon saw through Adonijah's intentions. "Why do you ask for Abishag? "This is like asking for the kingdom itself," Solomon said. Adonijah's ambition was a threat to the throne, and Solomon ordered his execution. Solomon then dealt with Joab, who fled to the altar for protection. Benaiah, Solomon's commander, struck Joab down for his crimes. Shimei too was placed under house arrest, but later broke his promise to remain within the city. Solomon declared, "Your own actions have brought this upon you," and Shimei was executed. With these actions, Solomon secured his reign and fulfilled his father's instructions. Solomon loved the Lord and followed the commands of his father, David. One night, while Solomon was at Gibeon offering sacrifices, the Lord appeared to him in a dream. "Ask for whatever you want me to give you," God said. Solomon replied, "You have shown great kindness to my father David, and now you have made me king. But I am only a child, and I do not know how to lead. Give me a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong." God was pleased with Solomon's request. "Because you have asked for wisdom instead of long life or riches, I will give you a wise and discerning heart, greater than anyone before or after you. And I will also give you what you did not ask for, wealth and honor. If you walk in obedience to me, I will give you a long life as well." Soon after Solomon's wisdom was tested, 2 women came before him, each claiming to be the mother of the same baby. One woman said, "This woman's baby died in the night, and she switched her dead child with mine." The other woman denied it. Solomon ordered, "Bring me a sword! Cut the living child in 2 and give half to each woman." The first woman cried out, "No! Give her the child, don't kill him!" But the other woman said, "Go ahead, cut him in 2. Solomon declared, "Give the child to the first woman. She is the real mother." The people of Israel marveled at Solomon's wisdom, recognizing that God had given him great understanding. Solomon's reign was marked by unparalleled prosperity and peace. Under his rule, Israel expanded its borders and enjoyed stability. Solomon organized his kingdom efficiently, appointing 12 governors over Israel, each responsible for providing supplies for the king and his household for 1 month of the year. This system ensured a steady flow of resources. The daily provisions for Solomon's palace were extraordinary: 30 cors of fine flour, 60 cors of meal, 10 fattened oxen, 20 pasture-fed cattle, and 100 sheep, along with deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fatted birds. These numbers reflected the abundance of his kingdom. During Solomon's reign, the people of Judah and Israel lived in safety, each man under his own vine and fig tree, from Dan to Beersheba. Solomon's wisdom became legendary. He spoke 3,000 proverbs and composed over 1,000 songs. He understood the nature of plants, animals, birds, and fish, gaining admiration from all nations. Kings from around the world sent envoys to hear his wisdom. One of Solomon's most significant ambitions was to build a temple for the Lord, a dream his father David had longed to fulfill. Solomon reached out to Hiram, the king of Tyre, who had been a loyal ally to David. Solomon wrote, "You know that my father could not build a temple for the Lord because of the wars around him. But now the Lord has given me peace on every side. I intend to build a temple for the name of the Lord." Hiram was pleased and sent a reply saying, "Blessed be the Lord, who has given David a wise son to rule this great nation." Hiram agreed to supply cedar and juniper logs from Lebanon, and in return, Solomon provided food for Hiram's household, 20,000 cors of wheat and 20,000 baths of olive oil annually. Solomon drafted 30,000 men from Israel to work in shifts, sending 10,000 at a time to Lebanon to assist with the logging. He also employed 70,000 carriers, 80,000 stonecutters, and 3,300 supervisors to oversee the work. The foundation of the temple was laid with large, costly stones, carefully cut to fit perfectly. In the 4th year of Solomon's reign, construction of the temple began. The temple was 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 45 feet high. The inner sanctuary, known as the most holy place, was overlaid with pure gold, symbolizing the holiness of God. The walls of the temple were lined with cedar, carved with images of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. The floors were made of juniper, and every detail of the temple was crafted with precision and care. One of the most remarkable features was the Ark of the Covenant, placed in the inner sanctuary. 2 cherubim, made of olive wood, stood 10 cubits high, their wings stretching across the width of the sanctuary, touching each other and the walls. During the construction, no sound of a hammer, chisel, or any iron tool was heard at the temple site. The stones were prepared at the quarry, ensuring the work proceeded in reverence. The Lord spoke to Solomon, saying, "If you follow my decrees and obey my commands, I will fulfill the promise I made to your father David. I will dwell among the Israelites and will not abandon my people." After 7 years of meticulous work, the temple was completed, a breathtaking monument to the glory of God. After completing the temple, Solomon spent 13 years building his royal palace. The palace complex included several grand structures, such as the Hall of Justice, where Solomon held court, and a palace for Pharaoh's daughter, whom Solomon had married. Solomon hired Huram, a skilled craftsman from Tyre, to create the temple's furnishings. Huram made 2 massive bronze pillars, each 18 cubits high, which stood at the entrance of the temple. These pillars were named Jachin, he establishes, and Boaz, in him is strength. Huram also crafted a large bronze basin called the Sea, which rested on 12 bronze oxen. This basin held water for the priests to use in ceremonial washing. Additionally, Huram made 10 bronze stands with wheels, decorated with cherubim, lions, and palm trees. Inside the temple, Solomon placed golden lampstands, tables for the bread of the presence, and golden basins. The altar and all the utensils used in worship were also made of gold. When the work was finished, Solomon dedicated the temple and brought in the items his father David had dedicated, silver, gold, and other treasures, and stored them in the temple's treasury. Once the temple was completed, Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, the tribal leaders, and the heads of families in Jerusalem to dedicate the temple. The Ark of the Covenant was brought from the city of David to the temple, accompanied by a grand procession of sacrifices. As the priests placed the Ark in the most holy place, a cloud filled the temple, symbolizing the presence of the Lord. The priests could not perform their duties because of the overwhelming glory of God. Solomon stood before the altar and prayed a powerful prayer of dedication. "Lord, the God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven or on earth. Will God really dwell on earth? Even the heavens cannot contain you, much less this temple I have built. Yet hear the prayers of your people when they turn toward this place and call on your name." Solomon's prayer covered every aspect of life, asking for God's forgiveness, guidance, and blessing for his people in times of sin, famine, war, and exile. He concluded by saying, "May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us nor forsake us." After the prayer, Solomon offered sacrifices, 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats. The dedication lasted 7 days, and the people celebrated with joy. The fame of Solomon's wisdom and wealth spread far and wide, reaching the Queen of Sheba, a ruler from a distant land, likely modern-day Ethiopia or Yemen. Intrigued by the stories she had heard, she decided to visit Solomon to test his wisdom with hard questions. The Queen of Sheba arrived in Jerusalem with a grand caravan, bringing spices, gold, and precious stones. When she met Solomon, she posed every question she could think of, testing his knowledge and understanding. To her amazement, Solomon answered all her questions with clarity and insight. The queen marveled at everything she saw: the palace, the temple, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the servants in their fine clothing, and the burnt offerings Solomon made at the temple. "The reports I heard in my own country were true," she said, "but I did not believe them until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half of your greatness was told to me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpass everything I was told. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel." As a gesture of goodwill, the Queen of Sheba gave Solomon 120 talents of gold, a great quantity of spices and precious stones. Solomon, in return, gave her whatever she desired, demonstrating his generosity. The visit of the Queen of Sheba was a testament to Solomon's unparalleled wisdom and the glory of his kingdom, which had become the envy of the world. Solomon's wealth and splendor. Solomon's wealth continued to grow, making Israel one of the most prosperous nations of its time. He received an annual tribute of 666 talents of gold, not including revenue from merchants, traders, and allied kings. He used this wealth to create lavish works, including a great throne made of ivory and overlaid with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps, with lions standing beside each step, a symbol of power and majesty, shields of hammered gold which adorned his palace, a fleet of trading ships that brought gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks every 3 years. During Solomon's reign, silver was as common as stones in Jerusalem, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Kings and rulers from across the world came to hear Solomon's wisdom and brought gifts of gold, silver, and fine goods, further cementing his legacy as the wealthiest and wisest king of his time. Despite his wisdom and success, Solomon's heart began to turn away from God. In his later years, he disobeyed God's commands by marrying many foreign women, 700 wives, and 300 concubines. These women came from nations God had forbidden the Israelites to intermarry with, knowing they would lead his people to worship false gods. As Solomon grew older, his wives influenced him to worship their gods, such as Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Solomon even built high places for these gods, where sacrifices and rituals were performed. This was a great sin in the eyes of the Lord. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. God said to Solomon, "Since you have not kept my covenant and have turned to other gods, I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. However, for the sake of your father David, I will not do this in your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. But I will leave one tribe for the sake of David and Jerusalem, the city I have chosen." And as a consequence of his unfaithfulness, God raised up adversaries to trouble Solomon. Hadad, the Edomite, who had escaped to Egypt during David's conquests, returned to Edom and became a thorn in Solomon's side. Rezin, son of Eliada, who ruled over Aram and harassed Israel, continually opposing Solomon. Jeroboam, one of Solomon's officials, rebelled against him. A prophet named Ahijah met Jeroboam and tore his cloak into 12 pieces, saying, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for the Lord is giving you 10 tribes of Israel. Solomon's son will keep only 1 tribe for the sake of David and Jerusalem." Jeroboam's rebellion foreshadowed the division of the kingdom that would follow Solomon's death. After reigning for 40 years, Solomon died and was buried in the city of David, his father. His son, Rehoboam, succeeded him as king, inheriting a kingdom that was vast in wealth and territory, but fractured in loyalty and faithfulness to God. Though Solomon's reign had been marked by incredible wisdom, prosperity, and achievements, his failure to remain faithful to God ultimately led to the kingdom's decline. His story stands as a powerful reminder of the dangers of pride, compromise, and turning away from God. After Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam became king. The people of Israel, weary from Solomon's heavy taxes and forced labor, gathered at Shechem to make Rehoboam king. Led by Jeroboam, who had returned from exile in Egypt, the people presented a request. "Your father placed a heavy burden on us. If you lighten the load, we will serve you." Rehoboam asked for 3 days to consider their request. He first sought the advice of the elders who had served his father Solomon. They said, "If you serve the people today and give them a favorable answer, they will always be loyal to you." But Rehoboam rejected their advice and turned to the young men he had grown up with. They told him, "Say to the people, 'My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father laid a heavy burden on you. I will make it heavier. My father disciplined you with whips. I will discipline you with scorpions." When Rehoboam gave this harsh response to the people, they rebelled. The northern tribes declared, "What share do we have in David? To your tents, O Israel." 10 tribes broke away and made Jeroboam their king, forming the northern kingdom of Israel. Rehoboam retained only the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, forming the southern kingdom of Judah. Rehoboam prepared to go to war to reunite the kingdom, but a prophet named Shemaiah delivered a message from God. "Do not fight against your brothers. This is my doing." Rehoboam obeyed, and the division became permanent. Jeroboam, now king of Israel, feared that his people might return to Rehoboam if they continued to worship at the temple in Jerusalem. To secure his rule, Jeroboam made 2 golden calves and said to the people, "Here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." He set 1 calf in Bethel and the other in Dan, establishing centers of worship to rival Jerusalem. This idolatry angered God. One day, as Jeroboam was offering sacrifices at the altar in Bethel, a prophet from Judah arrived and declared, "This altar will be torn down, and a king named Josiah will sacrifice the priests of these high places on it." To prove his words, the prophet said, "This altar will split apart, and its ashes will be poured out." Jeroboam stretched out his hand to seize the prophet, but his hand shriveled up instantly. At the same moment, the altar split apart, just as the prophet had said. Terrified, Jeroboam pleaded, "Pray to the Lord your God for me." The prophet prayed, and Jeroboam's hand was restored. Despite this miraculous sign, Jeroboam did not repent and continued to lead Israel into sin. Jeroboam's sins brought judgment on his house. When his son Abijah fell ill, Jeroboam sent his wife, disguised, to the prophet Ahijah for guidance. Ahijah, though old and blind, recognized her immediately. He delivered a harsh prophecy, "Because you have done more evil than all who came before you, rejecting God and leading Israel into idolatry, your dynasty will be destroyed. Every male in your house will be cut off, and dogs and birds will devour their bodies. As a sign," Ahijah said, "when you return home, your child will die." When Jeroboam's wife returned, her son died as she entered the house, fulfilling the prophecy. The rest of Jeroboam's reign was marked by conflict, and he was succeeded by his son Nadab. In Judah, Rehoboam's reign was turbulent. He allowed the people to set up high places, sacred stones, and Asherah poles for idol worship. His son Abijah succeeded him and continued in sin, but God preserved Judah because of his promise to David. In Israel, Jeroboam's dynasty was short-lived. Nadab, Jeroboam's son, reigned for 2 years before being assassinated by Baasha, who wiped out Jeroboam's entire family, fulfilling Ahijah's prophecy. Baasha became king and continued to lead Israel into sin, provoking God's anger. Baasha ruled Israel for 24 years, but his reign was marked by idolatry and war with Judah. A prophet named Jehu delivered a message from God. Because of your sins, your dynasty will end like Jeroboam's. Baasha's son Elah succeeded him, but was assassinated by Zimri, one of his officials, after reigning for just 2 years. Zimri became king, but ruled for only 7 days. When the army heard of his treachery, they made Omri, their commander, king. Zimri set fire to the palace and died in the flames. Omri established a new dynasty and built the city of Samaria, making it the capital of Israel. However, he continued the sinful practices of his predecessors and led Israel further into idolatry. After his death, his son Ahab became king, a ruler whose wickedness would surpass all those before him. During the reign of Ahab, king of Israel, wickedness reached new heights. Ahab had married Jezebel, a foreign queen who worshipped Baal, and introduced his cult to Israel. Under her influence, altars to Baal were built, and the prophets of God were persecuted. God raised up a prophet named Elijah from Tishbe in Gilead. Elijah boldly confronted Ahab, declaring, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word." At God's command, Elijah fled to the Kerith ravine, where he was hidden from Ahab. There God provided for Elijah through ravens, which brought him bread and meat twice a day, and he drank from the brook. However, as the drought persisted, the brook eventually dried up. God then sent Elijah to Zarephath, a town in Sidon, Jezebel's homeland. There he met a poor widow gathering sticks. Elijah said to her, "Would you bring me a little water and a piece of bread?" The widow replied, "I have only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I am gathering sticks to make one last meal for myself and my son, and then we will die." Elijah said, "Don't be afraid. Make a small loaf for me first, and then make something for yourself and your son. For the Lord says the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry, until the Lord sends rain on the land." The widow obeyed, and as Elijah promised, the flour and oil miraculously lasted throughout the drought. Later, her son became gravely ill and died. Distraught, the widow cried, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" Elijah took the boy to an upper room, laid him on the bed, and prayed fervently, "Lord, my God, let this boy's life return to him." The Lord heard Elijah's prayer, and the boy's life returned. The widow said, "Now I know you're a man of God, and the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." After 3 years of drought, the word of the Lord came to Elijah, "Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land." Elijah obeyed and met Ahab, who greeted him with hostility. "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" Elijah replied, "I have not made trouble for Israel, but you and your father's family have, because you have abandoned the Lord's commands and followed Baal. Summon the people of Israel to Mount Carmel, along with the prophets of Baal and Asherah." On Mount Carmel, Elijah confronted the people. "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." The people remained silent. Elijah proposed a test. "Let us prepare 2 bulls for sacrifice, one for Baal and one for the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God." The people agreed. The prophets of Baal prepared their sacrifice and called on their God from morning until noon. "Baal, answer us!" they shouted, dancing around the altar, but there was no response. Elijah mocked them. "Shout louder. Surely he's a god. Perhaps he's deep in thought or busy, or maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." The prophets of Baal shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords, as was their custom. But still, there was no response. Then Elijah called the people to him. He rebuilt the altar of the Lord with 12 stones, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. He arranged the wood, placed the bull on it, and dug a trench around the altar. He then poured water over the sacrifice and the wood 3 times until the trench was filled. Elijah prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant. Answer me, Lord, so these people will know that you are God." Immediately the fire of the Lord fell from heaven, consuming the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and even the water in the trench. The people fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" Elijah ordered the people to seize the prophets of Baal, and they were executed at the Kishon Valley. Then Elijah said to Ahab, "Go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of heavy rain." After the dramatic victory on Mount Carmel, Jezebel sent a message to Elijah, "May the gods deal with me severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them." Afraid, Elijah fled into the wilderness, overwhelmed and despairing. Under a broom bush he prayed, "I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down and fell asleep. An angel of the Lord touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He found bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. After eating, Elijah lay down again. The angel returned and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." Strengthened by the food, Elijah traveled 40 days and nights to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. In a cave, Elijah poured out his heart. "I have been zealous for the Lord, but the Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in my presence." A powerful wind tore through the mountains, but the Lord was not in the wind. Then came an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. Then came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard the whisper, he covered his face with his cloak and stood at the entrance of the cave. The Lord said, "Go back the way you came. Anoint Hazael king over Aram, Jehu king over Israel, and Elisha as prophet to succeed you. You are not alone. I have reserved 7,000 in Israel who have not bowed to Baal." King Ahab of Israel faced a grave threat when Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, gathered a vast army to besiege Samaria. Ben-Hadad sent a message to Ahab demanding, "Your silver and gold are mine, and the best of your wives and children belong to me." Ahab replied, "Just as you say, my lord the king. I and all I have are yours." But Ben-Hadad's second demand went further. "Tomorrow I will send my officials to search your palace and the houses of your officials. They will take whatever they want." Ahab consulted the elders of Israel, who advised him not to agree. Ahab sent a defiant reply, and Ben-Hadad prepared to attack. As the armies of Aram surrounded Samaria, a prophet of the Lord came to Ahab and said, "This is what the Lord says. Do you see this vast army? I will give it into your hand today, and you will know that I am the Lord." Ahab asked, "Who will do this?" The prophet replied, "The junior officers of the provincial commanders." Ahab mustered his forces, only 7,000 men, and launched a surprise attack led by the junior officers. The Arameans, unprepared for such a bold move, fled in confusion. Ben-Hadad barely escaped on horseback, and Israel won a miraculous victory. The next spring, Ben-Hadad returned with an even larger army, believing his earlier defeat was due to fighting in the hills. "The Israelites' God is a God of the hills," his advisers said. "If we fight them on the plains, we will surely win." Again, a prophet of the Lord came to Ahab, saying, Because the Arameans think the Lord is a God of the hills and not of the valleys, I will deliver this vast army into your hands, and you will know that I am the Lord." The two armies faced each other for 7 days before battle commenced. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the Israelites defeated the Arameans, killing 100,000 soldiers. The survivors fled to the city of Aphek, but the city walls collapsed, killing 27,000 more. Ben-Hadad, now desperate, sent envoys to Ahab, wearing sackcloth and begging for mercy. "Your servant Ben-Hadad says, 'Let me live.'" Ahab spared him, calling him "my brother," and made a treaty with him. However, this act of mercy disobeyed God's command to completely destroy Israel's enemies. Not long after, Ahab's covetousness led to another grievous sin. Ahab desired a vineyard owned by Naboth, a man from Jezreel, because it was close to the palace. Ahab offered to buy it or trade for a better vineyard, but Naboth refused, saying, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my ancestors." Ahab returned to the palace, sullen and angry. He refused to eat and lay on his bed, sulking. Jezebel, his wife, came to him and asked, "Why are you so upset?" Ahab explained, and Jezebel mocked him. "Is this how you act as king of Israel? Get up and eat. I'll get you the vineyard of Naboth." Jezebel wrote letters in Ahab's name to the elders of Jezreel, ordering them to accuse Naboth of cursing God and the king. Naboth was falsely accused, taken outside the city, and stoned to death. When Ahab heard Naboth was dead, he went to take possession of the vineyard. But the word of the Lord came to Elijah. "Go down to meet Ahab. Say to him, 'This is what the Lord says. Have you not murdered a man and seized his property? In the place where dogs licked up Naboth's blood, dogs will lick up your blood as well.'" Elijah also prophesied the downfall of Ahab's dynasty and Jezebel's gruesome death. Ahab, terrified, tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and fasted. God noticed Ahab's humility and delayed the judgment on his family until after his death. 3 years later, Ahab allied with Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, to retake Ramoth-Gilead from the Arameans. Jehoshaphat insisted on seeking God's guidance. Ahab summoned 400 prophets, who all said, "Go, for the Lord will give it into the king's hand." Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there no prophet of the Lord we can inquire of?" Ahab reluctantly called Micaiah, a prophet he disliked because he never gave favorable messages. When Micaiah was summoned, he initially mocked the other prophets, saying, "Attack and be victorious." But Ahab pressed him to speak the truth. Micaiah replied, "I saw Israel scattered on the hills like sheep without a shepherd." He warned that Ahab would die if he went to battle, but Ahab dismissed him, saying, "Put this man in prison until I return safely." Micaiah declared, "If you return safely, the Lord has not spoken through me." Ahab and Jehoshaphat went to battle, and Ahab disguised himself to avoid being targeted. However, a random arrow struck Ahab between the sections of his armor. Mortally wounded, Ahab ordered his chariot driver to take him out of the battle. He died that evening, and his blood was washed out of the chariot at a pool where dogs licked it up, fulfilling Elijah's prophecy. After Ahab's death, his son Ahaziah became king of Israel. Ahaziah followed in his father's footsteps, worshipping Baal and leading Israel into sin. One day, Ahaziah fell through the lattice of his upper room and was severely injured. Instead of seeking the Lord, he sent messengers to consult Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, about whether he would recover. The angel of the Lord spoke to Elijah, saying, "Go and intercept the king's messengers and ask, 'Is it because there is no God in Israel that you're consulting Baal-zebub? You will not leave the bed you're lying on. You will surely die.'" When the messengers returned and reported Elijah's words, Ahaziah was enraged. He sent a captain with 50 soldiers to arrest Elijah. They found him sitting on a hill, and the captain demanded, "Man of God, the king says, come down." Elijah replied, "If I am a man of God, may fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50 men." Fire fell from heaven and consumed them. Ahaziah sent another captain and 50 men, and the same thing happened. When a third captain was sent, he approached humbly, begging Elijah for mercy. The angel of the Lord told Elijah to go with him. Elijah delivered the same message to Ahaziah, "You will not recover." Ahaziah died, fulfilling Elijah's prophecy, and was succeeded by his brother Jehoram. Elijah's time on earth was coming to an end, and the Lord was about to take him to heaven in a whirlwind. Elijah and Elisha, his disciple, traveled from Gilgal, knowing the moment was near. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." At Bethel, the prophets there said to Elisha, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master today?" Elisha answered, "Yes, I know, but do not speak of it." This exchange repeated at Jericho and the Jordan River. When they reached the Jordan, Elijah struck the water with his cloak, and the river parted, allowing them to cross on dry ground. On the other side, Elijah asked, "What can I do for you before I am taken from you?" Elisha replied, "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." Elijah said, "You have asked a difficult thing, yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours." As they walked, a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated them. Elijah was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." He picked up Elijah's cloak, symbolizing the transfer of prophetic power. When Elisha returned to the Jordan, he struck the water with the cloak, saying, "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" The water parted, and the prophets recognized that Elijah's spirit now rested on Elisha. Jehoram, king of Israel, formed an alliance with Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and the king of Edom to fight against Moab, which had rebelled after Ahab's death. The 3 kings marched through the desert, but after 7 days they ran out of water for their armies and animals. Jehoram said, "The Lord has brought us here to be handed over to Moab." But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there no prophet of the Lord here through whom we may inquire of the Lord?" An officer replied, "Elisha, who served Elijah, is here." The kings went to Elisha, who said to Jehoram, "If not for the presence of Jehoshaphat, I would not even look at you. Bring me a harpist." As the harpist played, the hand of the Lord came upon Elisha, and he said, "The Lord says, dig ditches in this valley. You will see neither wind nor rain, but the valley will be filled with water, and you will have plenty to drink. This is an easy thing for the Lord. He will also deliver Moab into your hands." The next morning water flowed into the valley, and the ditches were filled. When the Moabites saw the water, it appeared red like blood. They thought, "The kings have fought and killed each other. Let's go plunder their camp." But when they attacked, the Israelites countered and defeated them, destroying Moab's cities and fields. The alliance was victorious, fulfilling Elisha's prophecy. Elisha's ministry was marked by compassion and miracles that demonstrated God's power. The widow's oil. A widow of a prophet came to Elisha saying, "My husband is dead, and his creditor is coming to take my 2 sons as slaves." Elisha told her to gather empty jars and pour oil into them. The oil miraculously multiplied, filling all the jars. She sold the oil, paid her debts, and saved her sons. The Shunammite's son. A wealthy woman from Shunem provided a room for Elisha whenever he passed through. To reward her kindness, Elisha prophesied that she would have a son. The prophecy came true, but years later the boy died suddenly. The woman rushed to Elisha, who came and prayed over the child. The boy was revived, a testament to God's power through Elisha. Poisoned stew. During a famine, a group of prophets made stew, but it contained poisonous gourds. Elisha added flour to the pot, and the stew became safe to eat. Feeding 100. Elisha fed 100 men with 20 loaves of barley bread and a few ears of grain. Miraculously, there was enough, and some was left over, demonstrating God's provision. Naaman, a commander of the army of Aram, was a great and honorable man, highly regarded by his king. Though he had led Aram to military victories, Naaman suffered from leprosy, a skin disease that brought physical pain and social isolation. One day, a young Israelite girl who had been captured during a raid and served as Naaman's wife's maid said, "If only my master would see the prophet in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." Desperate for healing, Naaman went to his king, who sent a letter to the king of Israel. "I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so you may cure him of his leprosy." The king of Israel was terrified. "Am I God, able to kill and bring back to life?" he exclaimed. "Why does this king send someone to me for healing? He must be trying to start a quarrel." When Elisha heard about this, he sent a message to the king. "Send Naaman to me, and he will know there is a prophet in Israel." Naaman arrived at Elisha's house with his chariots and horses, but Elisha did not come out to greet him. Instead, he sent a servant to say, "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and your flesh will be restored." Naaman was furious. "I thought he would surely come out to me, call on the name of his God, and wave his hand over me to cure me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus better than any water in Israel?" He turned and left in a rage. But Naaman's servants approached him and said, "If the prophet had told you to do something great, wouldn't you have done it? How much more when he says, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" Humbled, Naaman went to the Jordan and dipped himself 7 times, as Elisha had instructed. His skin was healed, becoming as smooth as a young child's. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Naaman returned to Elisha and said, "Now I know there is no God in all the world except in Israel. Please accept a gift from your servant." Elisha refused, saying, "As surely as the Lord lives, I will not accept a thing." Naaman insisted but was unable to persuade him. Before leaving, Naaman asked for 2 mule loads of earth so he could offer sacrifices to the Lord in his homeland. He also asked for forgiveness when he had to bow in the temple of Rimmon with his king. The floating axe head. One of the prophets under Elisha was cutting down a tree when his borrowed axe head fell into the river. "Oh no, my lord," he cried. "It was borrowed." Elisha asked where it fell, threw a stick into the water, and the iron axe head floated to the surface, demonstrating God's care even in small matters. Elisha's protection of Israel. The king of Aram waged war against Israel, but every time he planned an attack, Elisha warned the king of Israel, thwarting the plans. Furious, the Aramean king sent a large force to capture Elisha in Dothan. When Elisha's servants saw the army surrounding the city, he panicked. "Don't be afraid," Elisha said. "Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so he may see." The servant's eyes were opened, and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding Elisha. When the Arameans advanced, Elisha prayed, "Strike them with blindness," and they were blinded. Elisha led them to Samaria, where he prayed for their sight to be restored. Instead of killing them, the king of Israel prepared a feast for them and sent them home. The Arameans stopped raiding Israel. Samaria was under siege by the Arameans, causing a devastating famine. People were desperate, even resorting to cannibalism. The king of Israel blamed Elisha and vowed to kill him. But Elisha prophesied, "This time tomorrow, a measure of flour will sell for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria." That night, 4 lepers at the city gate decided to surrender to the Arameans. "If they spare us, we live. If they kill us, we die," they reasoned. When they reached the Aramean camp, they found it abandoned. The Lord had caused the Arameans to hear the sound of a great army, and they fled, leaving everything behind. The lepers reported the news to the city, and the people rushed out to plunder the camp. Just as Elisha had prophesied, the famine ended, and food became plentiful. The Shunammite woman's land restored. After 7 years of famine, the Shunammite woman returned to find her land occupied. Elisha's influence with the king of Israel led to the restoration of her property. Jehu's rise and judgment on Ahab's house. Elisha sent a prophet to anoint Jehu as king over Israel, instructing him to destroy the house of Ahab. Jehu executed Joram, Ahab's son, Ahaziah, king of Judah, and Jezebel, fulfilling Elijah's prophecy. He destroyed the temple of Baal and killed its priests, eradicating Baal worship from Israel. After the death of Ahaziah, king of Judah, his mother Athaliah seized the throne. Athaliah was ruthless, ordering the massacre of the royal family to secure her power. However, one child, Joash, or Jehoash, was saved by his aunt Jehosheba. She hid him in the temple of the Lord for 6 years under the care of Jehoiada, the high priest. In the 7th year, Jehoiada orchestrated a rebellion against Athaliah. He gathered the commanders, Levites, and leaders of Judah, making a covenant to crown Joash as king. They armed themselves and surrounded the boy king with protection. During the coronation in the temple, Athaliah heard the commotion and rushed in, shouting, "Treason! Treason!" But the soldiers captured her and executed her outside the temple grounds. Joash, only 7 years old, was crowned king of Judah. Under the guidance of Jehoiada, Joash initiated reforms. The people destroyed the temple of Baal, tore down its altars, and killed the priest of Baal. For as long as Jehoiada lived, Joash followed the Lord faithfully. Joash's reign was marked by significant efforts to restore the temple, which had been neglected and desecrated during Athaliah's reign. Joash instructed the priests to collect offerings from the people and use them to repair the temple. However, the priests were slow to act, so Joash implemented a new system, placing a chest at the temple entrance to collect funds directly. The people responded generously, and the money was used to hire skilled workers who restored the temple to its former glory. The work was meticulous, ensuring that the temple was repaired, not just patched. However, as Joash grew older and after Jehoiada's death, his faith wavered. He succumbed to the influence of corrupt officials, allowing idolatry to creep back into Judah. This spiritual decline led to conflict, and Joash was eventually assassinated by his own officials. His son, Amaziah, succeeded him as king. In Israel, Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became king and continued the sinful practices of Jeroboam, worshipping golden calves and leading Israel into idolatry. As a result, God allowed the Arameans to oppress Israel severely. In desperation, Jehoahaz sought the Lord, and God provided deliverance, though the nation remained spiritually weak. Jehoahaz's son, Jehoash, also called Joash, succeeded him and sought guidance from Elisha, who was on his deathbed. Jehoash cried, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." Elisha told Jehoash to shoot an arrow out of a window, symbolizing victory over Aram. Then he instructed him to strike the ground with arrows. Jehoash struck the ground 3 times and stopped. Elisha was angry, saying, "You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, then you would have completely destroyed Aram. Now you will defeat them only 3 times." Elisha died shortly after, but even in death, God's power worked through him. When a dead man was placed in Elisha's tomb, the man came back to life as soon as his body touched Elisha's bones. Amaziah, king of Judah, began his reign well, obeying the Lord and strengthening his kingdom. He defeated Edom in battle and brought back trophies of war. However, his pride led to a disastrous conflict with Jehoash, king of Israel. Amaziah challenged Jehoash to battle, but Jehoash warned him, saying, "A thorn bush in Lebanon sent a message to a cedar. Give your daughter to my son in marriage." Then a wild animal trampled the thorn bush. "You have defeated Edom and are proud, but stay at home. Why bring disaster on yourself and Judah?" Amaziah ignored the warning, and Judah was defeated. Jehoash captured Amaziah and looted the temple and palace in Jerusalem. This period saw rapid changes in leadership, particularly in Israel, marked by instability and violence. Zechariah, son of Jeroboam II, reigned briefly before being assassinated by Shallum. Shallum ruled for 1 month before being killed by Menahem, who became king and imposed heavy taxes to pay off the Assyrians. Pekahiah, Menahem's son, was assassinated by his officer Pekah, who took the throne. Pekah faced invasions from Assyria, losing significant territory. In Judah, Uzziah, also called Azariah, became king and enjoyed a long and prosperous reign. He sought the Lord and strengthened Judah militarily. However, his pride led him to enter the temple to burn incense, a role reserved for priests. God struck him with leprosy, and he lived in isolation for the rest of his life. Ahaz, king of Judah, turned completely away from God, embracing idolatry and even sacrificing his own son in pagan rituals. When Judah was threatened by Aram and Israel, Ahaz sought help from the king of Assyria instead of relying on the Lord. Ahaz plundered the temple treasury to pay the Assyrians, who helped defeat his enemies but placed Judah under heavy tribute. Ahaz also desecrated the temple, replacing the altar with one modeled after a pagan design and closing the temple's doors. The northern kingdom of Israel fell during the reign of Hoshea, its last king. Hoshea rebelled against Assyria by seeking an alliance with Egypt, prompting the Assyrians to invade. After a 3-year siege, Samaria fell, and the Israelites were exiled to Assyria. The Bible attributes Israel's downfall to their persistent idolatry and disobedience. They worshipped foreign gods, set up high places, and ignored the warnings of prophets like Elijah and Elisha. They followed worthless idols and became worthless themselves, the scriptures say. The Assyrians resettled the land with people from other nations, leading to the intermingling of cultures and religions that gave rise to the Samaritans in later history. Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, became king of Judah and reigned for 29 years. Unlike his father, Hezekiah trusted in the Lord with all his heart. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him, the scriptures say. One of Hezekiah's first acts as king was to cleanse Judah of idolatry. He removed high places, smashed sacred stones, and cut down Asherah poles. He even destroyed the bronze serpent Moses had made in the wilderness because the people had begun to worship it, calling it Nehushtan. Hezekiah also rebelled against Assyria, refusing to pay tribute. This bold defiance set the stage for one of the most remarkable displays of faith and God's deliverance in Judah's history. During Hezekiah's reign, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, invaded Judah and captured many fortified cities. Sennacherib sent his commander, the Rabshakeh, to Jerusalem with a message of intimidation. Do not let Hezekiah deceive you when he says, "The Lord will deliver us." Have the gods of any nation ever delivered their lands from the hand of the king of Assyria? What makes you think your God will save you? Hezekiah tore his clothes and went to the temple to pray. He sent messengers to Isaiah the prophet, asking for guidance. Isaiah sent back a message from the Lord. Do not be afraid of what you have heard. I will make Sennacherib return to his land, where he will die by the sword. Sennacherib renewed his threats in a letter, mocking God and urging surrender. Hezekiah took the letter to the temple, spread it out before the Lord, and prayed, Lord, the God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim, you alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. Hear the words Sennacherib has sent to ridicule you. Deliver us, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are God. That night, the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. In the morning, the Assyrians fled, and Sennacherib returned to Nineveh, where he was assassinated by his own sons, fulfilling Isaiah's prophecy. Hezekiah fell gravely ill, and Isaiah told him, This is what the Lord says, Put your house in order, for you will die. You will not recover. Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and wept bitterly, praying, Remember, Lord, how I have walked faithfully before you with wholehearted devotion. Before Isaiah had left the palace, the Lord told him to return and deliver a new message. I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will heal you. On the third day you will go up to the temple, and I will add 15 years to your life. As a sign, the Lord made the shadow on the sundial go back 10 steps, a miraculous confirmation of his promise. However, Hezekiah's pride later led him to show the wealth of Judah's treasury to envoys from Babylon. Isaiah rebuked him, saying, The time will come when everything in your palace will be carried off to Babylon, and some of your descendants will become eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Hezekiah's son, Manasseh, succeeded him, but unlike his father, Manasseh led Judah into deep sin. He rebuilt high places, erected altars to Baal, and even sacrificed his own son in pagan rituals. He placed idols in the temple of the Lord, desecrating the holy place. Manasseh led Judah to do more evil than the nations the Lord had destroyed before Israel, the scriptures say. The Lord declared through his prophets, I will bring such disaster on Jerusalem and Judah that the ears of everyone who hears of it will tingle. I will wipe out Jerusalem as one wipes a dish, turning it upside down. Manasseh's reign marked a spiritual decline from which Judah would not fully recover. After the wicked reigns of Manasseh and Ammon, Josiah became king at just 8 years old. Unlike his predecessors, Josiah followed the Lord wholeheartedly. In the 18th year of his reign, Josiah ordered repairs to the temple, which had fallen into disrepair. During the work, Hilkiah the high priest found the book of the law. When the book was read to Josiah, he tore his robes in grief and said, Great is the Lord's anger against us, because our ancestors have not obeyed the words of this book. Josiah sent messengers to consult the prophetess Huldah, who confirmed that disaster would come upon Judah because of its sins. However, because of Josiah's humility, God delayed the judgment until after his reign. Josiah led a nationwide revival, destroying idols, tearing down high places, and purging Judah of pagan worship. He renewed the covenant between God and his people, pledging to follow the Lord with all his heart and soul. He also reinstituted the Passover, celebrating it as it had not been celebrated since the days of the judges. Neither before nor after Josiah was there a king like him who turned to the Lord as he did. However, Josiah's life ended tragically. When Pharaoh Necho of Egypt marched through Judah, Josiah went to confront him at Megiddo. Despite being warned to stay away, Josiah insisted on battle and was mortally wounded. His death was deeply mourned by the nation. After Josiah's death, Judah spiraled into chaos. His sons, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, and Zedekiah, ruled poorly, refusing to heed the warnings of prophets like Jeremiah. The Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, invaded Judah repeatedly. In 586 BC, Jerusalem fell. The Babylonians destroyed the temple, burned the city, and carried the people into exile. Zedekiah, the last king of Judah, was captured, blinded, and taken to Babylon. Thus, the kingdom of Judah came to an end, fulfilling God's warnings. This happened because the people of Judah had forsaken the Lord their God, worshipped other gods, and ignored his covenant. As you've watched and enjoyed this incredible story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss our next post. There's so much more to explore, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.